On Sunday, November 10th, at exactly 10:47 in the morning, I stood on the front porch of my own home at 847 Maple Street and discovered that my key no longer worked. I'm Elizabeth Bennett. I'm 68 years old. I turned that key 3 times before I understood what had happened. Then I looked at the small white sticker near the handle. Secure lock installations, Friday, November 8th, 3:15 p.m. I didn't cry. I didn't bang on the door. I didn't call the police. I walked back to my 2015 Honda Civic, sat in the driver's seat, and started making a list in my head of everything I was going to do next. But first, let me tell you how I got here. My husband James died on April 3rd, 2023 at 11:42 in the morning. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, the brown leather recliner with the torn left armrest, reading the Star Tribune sports section when his heart simply stopped. I came out of the kitchen with his second cup of coffee and knew immediately. Some things, you just know. We'd bought this house in 1978 for $42,000. James was 32. I was 28. Our son David was 3 years old, running around in diapers and getting into everything. The house had avocado green appliances, rust stains in the bathtub, and a backyard that faced west so we could watch the sunset from the kitchen window. My grandmother used to say, "A house that faces the sunset is a house that knows how to rest." We rested well here. My grandparents were sharecroppers in Mississippi. My parents were part of the Great Migration, came up to Minneapolis in 1952 looking for something better than picking cotton for a man who'd never see you as human. When James and I bought this house, we weren't just buying wood and bricks. We were buying what my grandfather never had, something that was ours. The deed had our names on it, James Robert Bennett and Elizabeth Marie Bennett, and the bank couldn't take it away as long as we made our payments. We paid it off in 2003, 25 years to the day after we signed those papers. For 10 years after James died, I lived here alone. David would call every few weeks. "How you doing, Mom?" Quick conversations, always rushing to get somewhere. He'd married Madison Wright in 2019, a marketing consultant with sharp cheekbones, sharper words, and a family that had old money until they didn't. Madison was white, which didn't matter to me. What mattered was how she looked at this house the first time David brought her over, like it was something she was inspecting before deciding whether to buy it. "It's very lived in," she'd said, running one finger along the mantel where I kept my wedding photo. "That's because people have lived in it," I'd replied. She didn't laugh. Then came September 2024. David called on a Tuesday evening. "Mom, I need to ask you something." My son is 42 years old, but I could still hear the little boy in his voice when he wanted something. "Go ahead, baby." Madison's consultancy fell through, the investors backed out, and my firm just did layoffs. I'm one of the ones they let go. He paused. "We're in a tight spot financially. Could we stay with you for a while? Just 2, maybe 3 months while we figure things out." I thought about saying no. I'd been sleeping well for the first time in years. I'd been eating when I wanted, watching my shows when I wanted, keeping the thermostat at 72 degrees like I wanted. But this was my son. "Of course," I said. "You're always welcome here." They moved in on Sunday, September 15th. 4 suitcases, 2 garment bags, a 65-inch flat-screen TV I had no wall space for, and Madison's entire home office setup. She walked through each room with her phone, taking photos. "For insurance purposes," she said. The first week, small things changed. My wedding album disappeared from the sideboard in the living room. I found it later in a box in the hall closet, labeled Storage, Personal Items. "We needed the space for our books," Madison explained when I asked. She gestured to the shelf now holding books with white covers and gold lettering. The Art of Tidying, Minimalist Living, Declutter Your Mind. "These are important for my mental health practice." "Your what practice?" "I'm transitioning into wellness coaching," she said, as if that explained everything. The second week, they rearranged the furniture. James's armchair, the one he died in, the one I'd kept exactly as it was, got moved to the garage. "It doesn't fit the flow," Madison said. "I'm really sensitive to energy blockages." David was standing right there. He looked at me, opened his mouth, then closed it. "We'll move it back if you want, Mom," he said finally. "That's okay," I heard myself say. I didn't want to cause trouble in my own house. By the third week, I'd stopped cooking my Sunday pot roast. Madison was plant-based, she explained, and the smell of meat made her nauseous. I'm really sorry, Elizabeth, but could you maybe cook that when I'm out of the house? Elizabeth. Not Mom, not even Mrs. Bennet. Just Elizabeth, like I was a neighbor she barely knew. I started calling myself a guest in my own home, asking permission to use the living room, making sure my slippers weren't left out where Madison might trip, turning down the gospel music I liked to play on Sunday mornings because it disrupted her meditation. The money conversation started in October. Elizabeth, Madison said one evening, we were all in the kitchen, or what used to be my kitchen. David and I were wondering about the financial situation here. You know, utilities, property taxes, that sort of thing. We want to make sure we're contributing appropriately. You don't need to worry about that, I said. The house is paid off. I have my pension from the law firm. You were a lawyer? Her eyebrows went up. A legal secretary. 32 years at Morrison & Associates. Oh, the eyebrows came down. Well, we just want to make sure everything's organized. Do you have all your documents in order? Will, power of attorney, that kind of thing? Something cold touched the back of my neck. Why do you ask? Just planning ahead. You're getting up there in age, and it's important to have these things settled. My mother had to go into assisted living last year, and we weren't prepared. It was a nightmare. I was 68, not 88. I worked in my garden every morning. I drove myself to church. I volunteered at the community center teaching kids to read. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and changed the subject. That night I heard of them talking in the bedroom. My bedroom, the one I'd slept in with James for 38 years. The one I'd given them because the light is better in here, and we need space for our work setup. She's getting older, Madison's voice carried through the wall. We should start thinking about long-term arrangements. She's fine, Madison. She's sharp as ever. For now. But eventually she'll need care. And this house is too much for her. The property taxes alone. Can we not talk about this right now? We have to talk about it sometime. I'm just being realistic. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the small guest room, my guest room, in my own house, and stared at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. The same creaks and groans I'd known for 46 years. The house was talking to me, but I didn't understand what it was trying to say. Not yet. Ruth Williams called on Thursday, November 7th at 2:30 in the afternoon. Ruth had been my best friend since 1987 when we both volunteered at the same after-school program. She was a social worker, retired now, lived in Stillwater with her sister Diane. Lizzie, her voice was rough, thick. Diane's gone, passed this morning. Oh, Ruth, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I can't, she broke off. I heard her crying, really crying, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep. I can't do this alone. Can you come? Just for a few days? I know it's a lot to ask, but I'm coming, I said. I'll leave tomorrow morning. I told David and Madison at dinner. I'm going to Stillwater tomorrow to help Ruth. Her sister just passed. How long will you be gone? Madison asked. A few days. I'll be back Sunday by noon. Oh, something flickered across Madison's face. Take your time, Elizabeth. Ruth needs you. We'll hold down the fort here. I can handle things, Mom, David added. You go take care of your friend. I packed my overnight bag that evening. Just the essentials. 2 changes of clothes, my toiletries, my medication. I left a note on the kitchen counter, written on the notepad I'd had since 1995. Gone to Ruth's in Stillwater. Back Sunday, 11 a.m. There's chicken casserole in the fridge. Elizabeth. Friday morning, I left at 8:15 a.m. As I pulled out of the driveway, I looked back at the house. Madison was standing in the kitchen window, watching me go. She raised one hand in a wave. I should have known then. Should have felt it in my bones the way I felt James leaving before he'd even left. But I was worried about Ruth, and sometimes grief blinds you to danger. I drove the 2 hours to Stillwater with my mind on the past, on Ruth's sister, on James, on all the people we'd loved and lost. By the time I pulled up to Ruth's small house on Cherry Street, I'd cried myself empty. Ruth needed me. She needed someone to call the funeral home, to sort through Diane's things, to just sit with her in the quiet. For 3 days, I did that. I made her tea. I answered the phone when relatives called. I held her hand when she couldn't stop shaking. Sunday morning, Ruth looked better. Some color had come back to her face. "You should go home, Lizzie. You've got your own life." "You sure you're okay?" "I'm sure. Thank you for being here. I couldn't have. Thank you." I hugged her tight and left at 9:30 a.m., planning to be home by noon like I'd said. I pulled into my driveway at 10:43 a.m. The black Lexus, the one I'd helped David and Madison buy 2 years ago when they hit a rough patch, was parked exactly where I'd left space for it. The house looked the same. The hydrangeas I'd planted in 1985 were still there, though someone had trimmed them wrong, cutting them back too early for the season. I walked up to the porch carrying my overnight bag, put my key in the lock, turned it. Nothing. The key went in, but it didn't turn. Like the lock had frozen, except it was November and not that cold yet. I tried again, then a third time. That's when I saw the sticker. White, small, brand new. Secure lock installations, Friday, November 8th, 3:15 p.m. Friday, the day after I left. Not even 24 hours after I'd driven away. I stood there, looking at that sticker, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not even sadness, just a cold, clear understanding. I rang the doorbell, waited, rang it again. No answer. I knocked. Heavy, solid knocks that I knew they could hear. Still nothing. Their car was in the driveway. The lights were on inside. I could see movement through the curtains. They were home. They just weren't answering. I walked around to the back door, locked. The windows, all locked. Even the basement window that never quite closed right was locked tight. I went back to my car and sat in the driver's seat. My hands were shaking, but not from cold, from the slow realization of what had just happened to me. I called David. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "David, this is your mother. I'm back from Ruth's. The locks have been changed. I can't get into my house. Call me back." I waited 10 minutes. Called again. Voicemail. I called Madison. Straight to voicemail, like she'd blocked my number. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I sat in my car, watching my own house, waiting for someone to acknowledge that I existed. At 11:15 a.m., I opened my email on my phone. Maybe David had sent an explanation. Maybe there was some emergency, some reason. There were 3 new emails. The first was from First National Bank of Minnesota. Subject line, Property Title Search, Request Confirmation. I opened it. Dear Ms. Bennett, this email confirms that a property title search was requested for 847 Maple Street, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 55404 on Thursday, November 7th, 2024, at 2:17 p.m. The request was submitted through online banking using the account ending in ***4729. Account ending in 4729. That was David's account, the joint account I'd added him to 5 years ago for emergencies. I checked the timestamp. November 7th, 2:17 p.m., Thursday, the day before I left for Stillwater. 45 minutes before Ruth called. This wasn't a reaction. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a plan. I didn't leave. I know that sounds simple, but it was the hardest decision I'd made since I buried James. Every instinct told me to drive away, to call Ruth, to find somewhere, anywhere else to be. But this was my house, the house my husband and I built a life in, the house we'd fought for when banks were still redlining neighborhoods like ours. I drove 2 blocks down and parked in front of the Johnsons' house. They were in Florida for the winter, wouldn't mind. From there, I could still see my front porch if I turned my head. I sat there as the afternoon turned to evening. At 4:30 p.m., I saw Madison come out the front door. She was wearing yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, holding a coffee mug in both hands. My coffee mug, the one David gave me for Mother's Day in 2019 with "World's Best Mom" printed on the side. She stood on the porch and looked around. Not searching, surveying, like someone admiring property they owned. Then she smiled, took a sip of coffee, and went back inside. That smile told me everything I needed to know. At 6 p.m., my stomach started growling. I hadn't eaten since breakfast at Ruth's. There was a gas station 3 blocks away, the Speedway on Lyndale Avenue. I drove there, used the bathroom, bought a bag of peanuts and a bottle of water. The young man behind the counter, couldn't have been more than 22, black kid with neat cornrows, gave me a concerned look. "You okay, ma'am?" "I'm fine, baby. Just a long day. You need me to call somebody?" The kindness in his voice almost broke me. No, thank you. I appreciate you asking, though. He nodded slowly. You take care of yourself. I went back to my car and ate the peanuts one by one, washing them down with water that tasted like plastic. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom, I saw you called. Everything okay? I stared at that text for a full minute. Everything okay. Like he didn't know. Like his mother wasn't locked out of her own house, eating gas station peanuts in a car 2 blocks away. I typed back. I'm at the house. The locks are changed. I can't get in. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, oh no, Madison must have done that for security. We had a break-in scare on Friday. I'll get you a key tomorrow. A break-in scare. On the same day they ordered a property title search on my house. I didn't respond. Night fell. The temperature dropped to 43 degrees. I had a blanket in the trunk, an old quilted one I kept for emergencies, and I wrapped it around myself in the driver's seat. My knees started aching around 8 p.m. By 10 p.m., my lower back was screaming. At my age, your body doesn't forgive you for sleeping in cars. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile. Madison's satisfied smile as she surveyed her kingdom. At 1:47 a.m., I had to use the bathroom again. The gas station was closed. I drove to the 24-hour McDonald's on Lake Street, went inside, used their restroom. Bought a small coffee I didn't want just so they wouldn't think I was homeless. The woman at the counter, Latina, maybe 50, name tag said Rosa, looked at me with recognition. Not of who I was, but of what I was going through. Women know. We always know. You want cream and sugar with that, honey? Please. She put in extra sugar without asking. You have somewhere warm to go tonight? I will tomorrow, I said. She nodded. Stay as long as you need. It's slow tonight. I sat in a booth by the window for an hour, making that coffee last, feeling the warmth seep back into my bones. A few other people came and went. A group of teenagers, a man in a security uniform, a woman with a sleeping baby. All of us just trying to make it through the night. At 3 a.m., I went back to my car, sat there in the dark, watching the streetlights paint orange shadows across the dashboard. This is when it hit me. Not the betrayal, I'd understood that hours ago. What hit me was the calculation of it. They'd waited until I left. They'd planned it for the day after I was gone. They'd researched the legal implications. And they'd done all of this while I cooked their meals, washed their clothes, made myself small in my own home. I thought about James. About what he'd say if he could see this. Actually, I knew exactly what he'd say. He'd said it to me 20 years ago when David went through his first divorce and wanted to move back home. Lizzie, James had told me, you love that boy with your whole heart, but love without boundaries is just permission to be used. You hear me? I'd nodded, but I hadn't really understood. Not then. I understood now. At 5:47 a.m., the sky started turning gray. I watched my house wake up. Lights came on in the kitchen, my kitchen. I could see Madison moving around inside, probably making her morning smoothie in the Vitamix I'd bought for Christmas, because she said she really needed it for her health. At 6:15 a.m., I called Frank Peterson. Frank Peterson had been James's friend since 1984. They'd met at a community meeting about neighborhood safety. Frank owned Peterson's Hardware and Locksmith on East Franklin Avenue, had owned it for 40 years. When James died, Frank came to the funeral in his best suit and told me, anything you need, Lizzie. Anything at all. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Peterson's. Frank, it's Elizabeth Bennett. A pause. Lizzie, what's wrong? It's 6 in the morning. I need locks changed, today. Right now, if you can. Another pause, longer this time. Frank was a smart man. He knew there was a story here, and he knew better than to ask for it over the phone. What's the address? 847 Maple Street. That's your house. Yes. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Frank, I should tell you, there are people inside who might— Lizzie, he cut me off, his voice gentle but firm. I've known you for 40 years. James was my brother. If you're calling me at 6 in the morning to change the locks on your own house, I don't need to know anything else. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He hung up. I drove back to my house and parked in the driveway. Boldly, openly, like I had every right to be there. Because I did. At 6:43 a.m., Frank's white van pulled up. He got out slowly. He was 71 now, moved a little stiff, and walked over to my car. I rolled down the window. "You okay?" he asked. "I will be." He looked at the house, then back at me. "They changed these locks while you were gone?" "Friday afternoon. I found out yesterday." Frank's jaw tightened. He didn't ask who they were. Didn't need to. "Let's fix that." He went to work. It took him exactly 23 minutes to remove the new lock and install a deadbolt. A Schlager BE 365, he told me. Same kind they use in commercial buildings. "This one's got a reinforced strike plate," he explained as he worked. "Can't be kicked in, can't be picked easy. Your house, your lock." At 7:09 a.m., he handed me 2 brass keys. "You want more copies?" "No, 2 is enough." "That'll be $185 for the parts and labor." I pulled out my wallet, but he waved it away. "Consider it a gift. James helped me out more times than I can count. This is me paying that forward." "Frank, Lizzie, let an old man do something right." He squeezed my shoulder. "You call me if you need anything else. Anything at all." He drove away just as the sun broke over the roofline. I stood on my porch, and put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly, perfectly. The deadbolt clicked open with the sound of everything falling back into place. I opened the door and stepped into my house. The smell hit me first. Not the smell of my home, not the Folgers coffee and the coconut oil I used on my skin, and the faint scent of the lemon pledge I cleaned with every Saturday. This was different. Expensive candles, lavender something, that eucalyptus spray Madison was always using. My wedding photo was still missing from the sideboard. The cream-colored couch had new throw pillows, gray and white, minimalist. The books on the shelf were still all Madison's, but the floor still creaked in the same spot near the hallway. The morning light still came through the kitchen window at exactly the right angle to make the old linoleum shine. The house remembered me, even if they'd tried to erase me from it. I went to the master bedroom, my bedroom, the one I'd given up. Madison's silk robe hung on the back of the door. Her makeup was spread across the dresser that used to hold James's watches and cufflinks. The bed was unmade. Expensive white sheets tangled up, probably 800 thread count Egyptian cotton, because Madison only liked quality things. I didn't touch anything. I just looked, memorized, understood. Then I went to the spare room where they'd put me. A box sat on the floor, labeled in Madison's handwriting. "Elizabeth, donate?" Inside were my things, my photo albums, my mother's Bible, the quilt my grandmother made in 1967, all packed up like trash. I carried that box back to my room, my real room, put it on the bed. Then I started gathering Madison and David's things. I didn't throw them, didn't damage them. I folded every piece of clothing, zipped up every suitcase, collected every makeup item, every charging cable, every expensive supplement bottle. I worked methodically, carefully, like I was packing for someone going on a long trip. It took me an hour and 40 minutes. At 8:52 a.m., I carried the first suitcase out to the front lawn, then the second, then the garment bags, then the boxes. I lined them up neatly along the edge of the porch, organized by type. Clothes here, electronics there, bathroom items in their own pile. Mrs. Chen from across the street was getting her newspaper. She stopped and stared. I waved. She waved back uncertainly. By 9:15 a.m., everything was out. I went back inside, made myself a cup of tea, real tea, the Lipton I liked, not Madison's fancy loose-leaf organic whatever, and sat down at the kitchen table. I was sitting there, steam rising from my cup, when I heard it. The sound of a key that doesn't work. Then knocking. Urgent. Confused. "Elizabeth?" Madison's voice sharp with confusion. "Elizabeth, what's wrong with the lock?" I sipped my tea. More knocking. Harder now. "Elizabeth, I know you're in there. Open this door." I stood up, walked slowly to the door, and opened it. Madison stood there in her workout clothes, hair in a perfect ponytail, face flushed with anger. Behind her, David was getting out of the Lexus, phone in his hand. "What the hell is this?" Madison gestured at the luggage on the lawn. "Why is our stuff outside? What did you do to the lock?" I looked at her, really looked at her. "I changed the locks on my house." She stopped, blinked. "This isn't funny, Elizabeth. We live here." "No," I said calmly. "You stayed here, temporarily. That's different." David reached the porch, breathing hard. "Mom, what's going on?" I turned to my son. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Find out what? I pulled out my phone, showed him the email from the bank. The property title search, Thursday, November 7th, 2:17 p.m., the day before I left. His face went pale. Mom, I can explain. You requested a title search on my house while I was packing to help my friend bury her sister. It wasn't, we were just... I pulled out the printed emails I'd accessed at 2:00 a.m. from the McDonald's. The ones I'd found by logging into David's email. The password was still David 1982, like it had been for 20 years. October 23rd, I read aloud. Email from Madison to Sterling and Associates Law Firm. Question about adverse possession laws in Minnesota. If someone lives in a property for X amount of time, can they claim ownership? Madison's face went white. October 30th. Email to Happy Meadows Senior Living. Inquiry about memory care facilities for early-stage dementia patient, age 68. I don't have dementia, I said, looking at David. I worked as a legal secretary for 32 years. I know what these emails mean. David opened his mouth. Nothing came out. November 2nd, I continued. Email from Madison to David, CC Ed so you both knew, saying, and I quote, once we get her into care, the house transfers to us under the financial guardianship clause. It's not stealing, it's planning ahead. Silence. Complete silence. You weren't helping me, I said quietly. You were evicting me from my own home. The home your father and I bought in 1978 when banks were still discriminating against black families. The home we paid for with money we earned when people like your wife's parents wouldn't hire people who looked like us. Mrs. Bennett, Elizabeth, Madison started. This house is in my name, I said. Only my name. James put it in my name alone in 2015 when he updated the will. You have no claim to it, no legal standing, no rights. I stepped back from the door. You have 20 minutes to load your car and leave. After that, you're trespassing and I'll call the police. You can't do this. Madison's voice went high, panicked. We have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you tried to have me declared incompetent. David finally found his voice. Mom, please. I made a mistake. Madison convinced me. Don't you dare blame her, I said, and my voice was steel. You're 42 years old. Every decision you made, you made. You could have said no. You could have stopped her. You could have called me and asked, Mom, is this what you want? But you didn't. You let her open my mail. You let her pack up my mother's Bible. You let her call senior living facilities behind my back. Tears started running down his face. I'm sorry. So am I said. You have 19 minutes. They loaded the car in silence. Madison was crying angry tears, slamming the trunk, throwing things. David moved like a man in a dream, slow and shocked. At one point, he stopped and looked at me. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, David. Where was I supposed to go when you changed these locks? He didn't have an answer for that. At 9:47 a.m., the Lexus pulled out of the driveway. Madison didn't look back. David did, once, his face a mask of something I couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe, or just surprise that his mother had a spine. I watched until they turned the corner and disappeared. Then I went inside, closed the door, and locked it. The house was quiet. Still, mine again. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the windowsills, reclaiming every inch. When I got to the master bedroom, I sat down on the bed, my bed, and finally, I let myself cry. Not for them, for me. For the woman who'd made herself so small that her own son thought she'd disappear without a fight. My phone rang. Ruth. Lizzie, you okay? I've been worried. I wiped my eyes. Ruth, I need to tell you something. I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Ruth laughed. Not a mean laugh, a proud one. Girl, James is up there cheering right now, you know that? You think? I know. What are you going to do now? I looked around my room, my house, my life. I'm going to live, Ruth. Just live. In my own home. On my own terms. Amen to that. After we hung up, I made myself breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs and bacon and grits, cooked the way I liked them. I ate at the kitchen table with the Sunday paper spread out in front of me, the morning light warm on my face. Outside, Mrs. Chen was still watching. She caught my eye through the window and gave me a thumbs up. I smiled and raised my coffee cup in a toast. To freedom. To boundaries. To locks that only I had the keys for. Monday morning, November 11th at 9 a.m. sharp, I sat in the office of Karen Washington, attorney at law. I'd found her number in the Yellow Pages. Yes, I still use the Yellow Pages, under Elder Law Specialists. Her office was on Nicollet Avenue, third floor of an old building with windows that looked out over downtown Minneapolis. The waiting room had photos on the wall. Karen with the mayor, Karen at community events, Karen receiving an award from the Minnesota State Bar Association. She came out to greet me herself. A black woman in her mid-50s, natural hair and locks pulled back with a colorful scarf, wearing a sharp navy suit and the kind of smile that said she'd heard every story there was to hear. "Mrs. Bennett? I'm Karen Washington. Come on back." Her office was lined with law books and family photos. She gestured to a comfortable chair across from her desk. "So, you said on the phone this was urgent. Tell me everything." I told her. All of it. The locks, the emails, the property title search, the senior living facility inquiries. I showed her the printed emails I'd found. She listened without interrupting, making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and shook her head. "Mrs. Bennett, you're not the first person who's sat in that chair with this exact story. Elder financial abuse is an epidemic, and it's almost always family members doing it." She tapped her pen on the desk. "The good news is you caught it early. You took action. And you have evidence. That puts you way ahead of most." "I need to protect myself," I said. "Legally, so this can never happen again." "Smart. Here's what we're going to do." She outlined the plan, writing as she talked. "First, update the will. The house would stay in my name, and upon my death, it wouldn't automatically transfer to David. Instead, the will would include language stating that David could inherit only if we had rebuilt our relationship in a meaningful way, defined as consistent contact, mutual respect, and demonstrated understanding of past wrongs. If those conditions weren't met within 5 years of my death, the house would be sold, and the proceeds would go to the North Minneapolis Youth Education Fund, a scholarship program for Black students. That way, Karen explained, you're not cutting him out completely. You're giving him a chance to be the son you raised, but you're also making it clear that inheritance is a privilege, not a right. Second, power of attorney. I would remove David from all financial and medical power of attorney documents. Ruth Williams would become my primary agent, with Karen as secondary. "Your friend Ruth?" Karen asked. "You trust her completely?" "With my life." "Good. That's who should have this power, not someone who's already shown they can't be trusted." Third, healthcare directive. A clear, legally binding document stating my wishes for end-of-life care, who could make medical decisions if I couldn't, and, this was Karen's idea, a specific clause stating that I was of sound mind as of this date, November 11th, 2024, verified by medical examination. "We'll have you see a doctor this week for a cognitive assessment," Karen said. "That way, if anyone ever tries to claim you weren't competent when you made these changes, we have medical proof that you were." The whole consultation took 2 hours. When we finished, Karen walked me to the door. "Mrs. Bennett, can I tell you something off the record?" "Please." "My grandmother went through something similar. Her son, my uncle, tried to have her declared incompetent so he could take her house. She was 70 years old, sharp as a tack, but he told everyone she had dementia." Karen's eyes got hard. "She fought him in court and won, but it broke something in her. She was never the same." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be strong. And you are. You did exactly the right thing." She squeezed my hand. "I'll have the documents ready by Friday. And Mrs. Bennett? Your husband would be proud." I started crying right there in her office. Not sad tears. Relief tears. "He would," I managed to say. "He really would. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from David. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. Good. I needed the silence. Needed to remember what it felt like to wake up in my own house without walking on eggshells. To cook what I wanted when I wanted. To turn on my gospel music at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning without worrying about disturbing someone's meditation. The first Sunday after they left, November 17th, I made a pot roast, a real one, with potatoes and carrots and onions, the way James used to like it. The smell filled the whole house, rich and warm and mine. I called Ruth. "You doing anything for dinner?" Just me and a lean cuisine. Come over. I made too much. She arrived at 5:30 p.m. with a bottle of wine and a pecan pie. We sat at my kitchen table, my table in my kitchen, and ate until we couldn't eat anymore. We talked about everything except David and Madison. Talked about Ruth's grandkids in Chicago, about the new pastor at church, about Mrs. Chen's daughter who just had twins. You know what I realized? I said, pouring us both more wine. When they were here, I stopped inviting people over, stopped going to church socials, stopped volunteering at the literacy center. Why? Because I was embarrassed. Didn't want people to see how small I'd become in my own home. Ruth reached across the table and took my hand. You're not small anymore. No, I agreed. I'm not. The next week, I went back to church, New Rising Star Baptist, where I'd been a member for 35 years. I walked in during the call and response section of the sermon, and Sister Patricia saw me and gasped out loud. Elizabeth Bennett! Girl, where have you been? After the service, I got swarmed. People hugging me, asking where I'd disappeared to, telling me I was missed. I joined the choir again, alto section, where I'd sung since 1989. We had rehearsal every Thursday at 6:30 p.m., and it felt like coming home. I started working in my garden again. The tomato plants were dead from the first frost, but I could prep the beds for spring. Mrs. Chen came over one afternoon while I was weeding. That was quite a show the other Sunday, she said, smiling. I hope I didn't disturb you. Disturb me? Honey, I was cheering. My daughter tried to pull the same thing with me 2 years ago, wanted to put me in a home and sell my house. She shook her head. I told her exactly what you told those two. Not in this lifetime. We ended up having coffee together. She introduced me to her husband, Robert, who had retired from the post office and made a mean poker face. You play cards? He asked. Haven't in years. Well, you should. We have a group that meets every other Friday. You'd fit right in. I started going to card night, started saying yes to invitations, started living again. But David kept calling. The first call came on November 19th. I saw his name on the screen and let it go to voicemail. Mom, it's me. I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I get it. But I need you to know I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Can we talk? Please? I deleted it. The second call came on November 25th, Thanksgiving Day. Another voicemail. Mom, it's Thanksgiving. I'm alone in a studio apartment in Bloomington eating Chinese takeout, and all I can think about is your turkey and dressing. But mostly I'm thinking about how I treated you, how I let Madison treat you, how I became someone Dad would be ashamed of. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I saved that one. Didn't know why. Just did. The third call came on December 1st. Mom, I'm not going to keep calling if you don't want me to, but I need to tell you something. I'm in therapy. Real therapy, twice a week. The therapist asked me when I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as an obstacle to what Madison wanted. I couldn't answer that. Couldn't say exactly when it happened. But I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to be better. I love you. Even if you never forgive me, I love you. I listened to that message 3 times. Then I called Ruth. What do I do? What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to hear him out. Part of me thinks it's too soon. Part of me thinks it's too late. Which part is loudest? I thought about that. The part that wants to wait, see if this is real or if it's just guilt talking. Then wait, Ruth said simply. If he's serious about changing, he'll prove it with time, not with words. So I waited. On December 10th, a Tuesday, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not an email, not a text, a real letter in a cream-colored envelope with my name written in David's handwriting. I made tea before I opened it, sat down at the kitchen table where the afternoon light was best, took a breath, then I opened it. Dear Mom, I've been in therapy for 4 weeks now. Dr. Reynolds is a good man, a black man about Dad's age, which I think matters. He asked me a question last week that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. When did you stop seeing your mother as a person? I told him I never stopped. He said, then how could you do what you did? I didn't have an answer. I still don't, not really. Madison and I are separating. Not divorcing yet, but we're living apart, and she's moving back to Boston to be near her family. You should know. This isn't because of the house. It's because I finally saw what she'd been doing to both of us. She didn't just try to take your house. She took my voice, my judgment, my memory of who I was before I met her. Do you remember when I was in high school and I got suspended for fighting? I punched Trevor Matthews because he called you a racial slur. You and Dad grounded me, but Dad also said, "I'm proud you stood up. Just find better ways to do it." That's who you raised me to be. Someone who stands up for what's right. But somewhere along the way, I forgot. I let Madison convince me that helping you meant managing you, that love meant control, that taking care of you meant taking things from you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet, maybe ever. But I'm asking if someday, not now, but someday, I could earn back the right to call myself your son. I found Dad's old toolbox in a storage unit. Remember it? The red Craftsman one he bought in 1985? I'm using it to rebuild the porch at my new apartment. Starting small. Learning to build things instead of taking what's already built. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I'm sorry anyway. Your son, I hope. David, I sat there for a long time holding that letter. My hands weren't shaking. My eyes were wet, but I wasn't crying. I was just feeling the weight of years, of love and betrayal and the long road between them. I picked up the phone and called Ruth. He wrote me a letter. What did it say? I read it to her, word for word. When I finished, Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. What would you do?" "Baby, that's not for me to say. But I'll tell you this. That boy is trying. The question is whether he's trying to feel better or trying to be better. Only time will tell you which one it is. So I wait. You wait, and you watch, and you decide on your own terms, not his." I folded the letter carefully and put it in my Bible, between Psalms and Proverbs. Then I went about my day. 6 weeks and 2 days after I changed the locks, December 27th to be exact, David sent me a text at 8:15 a.m. "Mom, I know I don't have the right to ask, but can I come by this Saturday? I noticed last time I drove past that the garden fence is broken. I'd like to fix it. I'll bring my own tools. I won't ask to come inside. Just let me do this one thing. Please." I stared at that text for 10 minutes. Then I typed back, "Saturday, 9 a.m. Bring your own tools." Saturday morning, I woke up at 6:30 a.m., made coffee, sat on the porch and watched the sun come up, trying to figure out how I felt. Nervous, hopeful, guarded, all of it at once. At 8:58 a.m., a blue Honda Civic I didn't recognize pulled up. David got out. He'd lost weight, maybe 15 pounds. His hair needed cutting. He was wearing old jeans and a flannel shirt I remembered from years ago, and he was carrying Dad's red toolbox. He stopped at the edge of the lawn. "Morning, Mom." "Morning." "Fences over here?" "East side of the yard." He nodded and walked over. Didn't ask for coffee. Didn't try to hug me. Just got to work. I went to my garden and started working on the beds, preparing them for spring planting. We worked for 2 hours without talking. Just the sound of his hammer and my trowel, both of us doing what needed doing. Finally, around 11 a.m., he spoke. "I joined a men's group at the community center on Lake Street." I kept digging. What kind of group? For guys who lost themselves in their relationships, who need to figure out how to be men again instead of extensions of their partners. He paused. "There are 8 of us, all different ages, different situations, but the same story. We stopped being ourselves." "How's that going?" "Hard. Really hard. But good." More silence. He hammered. I planted. "Madison wanted me to ask you something before she left," he said finally. I looked up. "What?" "She wanted me to ask if you consider dropping the—" He stopped. "No. Actually, she demanded I ask, but I told her no. Told her she had no right to ask you for anything." "What did she say?" "She said I was choosing you over her." I said yes, I was. That I should have chosen you from the beginning. I went back to my planting. "She moving to Boston?" "Left last week. Her parents are paying for the movers." He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Turns out when you really need them, they'll help. Just took me losing everything to figure out who my real family is." At noon, he finished the fence. Came over to where I was working. "All done. Should hold for another 5 years at least." "Thank you." "Mom, he He stopped, started again. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think Dad would ever forgive me for what I did? I sat back on my heels and looked at my son. Really looked at him. Saw the boy who used to help his father build birdhouses in this same garden. The teenager who stayed up all night studying for his CPA exam at this kitchen table. The man who held my hand at his father's funeral and promised he'd always take care of me. Your father loved you, I said slowly. But he also told me once, love without boundaries is just permission to be used. You crossed boundaries, David. Bad ones. The question isn't whether your father would forgive you. It's whether you can forgive yourself and become someone who won't do it again. He nodded, eyes wet. I'm trying. I know. He picked up his toolbox, started walking to his car, then he turned back. Ruth's making gumbo next Sunday, I heard myself say. 1 o'clock. You can come if you want. His whole face changed. I'd like that. Don't be late. I won't, I promise. He drove away. I watched until his car disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside and called Ruth. I invited him to Sunday dinner. You did? I did. Is that okay? Honey, it's your healing, your timeline, your terms. She paused. I'll make extra gumbo. March 17th, 2025. The first Sunday of spring. My dining room table was full. Ruth sat on my right, wearing the purple dress she saved for special occasions. David sat on my left, quieter than he used to be, but present. Really present. Mrs. Chen and her husband Robert were across from me, laughing about something their grandson had done. Sister Patricia from church was there with her daughter Keisha. Young Marcus from the Literacy Center, the kid I'd been tutoring, came with his grandmother. The table was covered with food. My fried chicken and collard greens, Ruth's gumbo, Mrs. Chen's dumplings, Sister Patricia's mac and cheese. Everyone had brought something, and the smell of it all together was like a symphony. I sat at the head of the table, the seat that was mine, in the house that was mine, surrounded by people who saw me as a person, not a problem to be managed. David caught my eye and smiled. A real smile, tentative but genuine. He'd been coming to Sunday dinners for 8 weeks now. Sometimes we talked about hard things. Sometimes we didn't talk much at all. But he showed up. Every week, he showed up. After dinner, he helped me with the dishes. We stood side by side at the sink, him washing, me drying, like we used to do when he was a boy. Thank you for letting me be here, he said quietly. Thank you for earning your place here. Mom, he stopped. I know I can't undo what I did, but I'm grateful you're giving me the chance to try to do better. That's all any of us can do, baby. Try to do better. After everyone left, I stood at the kitchen window, watching the sun set behind the houses across the street. The same sunset I'd watched for 47 years. The house was quiet again, but it was a good quiet, a peaceful quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. Beautiful evening. Your table, your home, your life, your terms. Proud of you, sister. I texted back a heart emoji, one of the few emojis I'd learned how to use. Then I made myself a cup of tea and sat in James's armchair, back from the garage, back where it belonged. I picked up the new key Frank had made me, held it in my palm. Solid brass, cool and heavy. People ask me sometimes if I regret being hard on David, if I wish I'd been more forgiving, faster to let him back in. I don't, because love without boundaries isn't love. It's erasure. And I'd been erased enough. This house isn't just mine now, it's mine again. And there's a difference. I still don't know if David and I will fully heal. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I know this. I will never again trade my peace for someone else's comfort. I will never again make myself small to make someone else feel big. And I will never, ever apologize for taking up space in my own home. The lock they changed? Best thing that ever happened to me, because it taught me the most important lesson. When someone locks you out of your life, sometimes the answer isn't to beg for a key. Sometimes you just build a stronger door. And you decide, on your own terms, in your own time, who gets to walk through it. I stood up, walked to the front door, and locked it for the night. One turn of the key, one solid click. My house, my lock, my life. Finally, completely, peacefully mine.